Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the show where we go beyond the headlines to explore the world of cannabis and its potential to heal and transform lives. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we have a groundbreaking episode for you. Many of you have heard about the rapid growth in the cannabis industry, but aren't necessarily aware of its incredible entrepreneurs that are paving the way for more inclusive and equitable market. Our guest today is one and such trailblazer, Christina Betancourt Johnson. She's the founder and CEO of Standard Wellness Maryland and The Forest. Christina's company is a shining example of innovation and diversity in the cannabis space. It's the first African-American and Latina majority-owned vertically integrated cannabis company in the United States, and Maryland's first vertically integrated social equity licensed cannabis company. Christina, welcome, and thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me, Montel. I'm glad to be here today.
Absolutely. I'm a Maryland boy myself, so born and raised in Maryland. Let's talk a little bit about your background. What led you to the cannabis industry, and how did you decide to establish Standard Wellness Maryland?
Yeah, so I'll make a long story short, Montel. I know we've got some time, but I don't think anybody ends up in the cannabis industry because it's something they, have been doing for years and years and years. There are a few of us, but not many. Back in 2017, I was off of a brain injury, and I had been previously a CEO and worked in the nonprofit sector for many, many years, but then also in the real estate development sector. And at that time, my fiance had suggested that I meet with two folks that were actually in the sector, take a meeting for him. One of them happened to be the CEO and founder of a multi-state operator. And, through discussions, I learned that they were interested in pursuing licensure in Maryland. At that time, it was the talks were in very, very, very early stages in the legislature. And I had gone to business school. My dad was a criminal defense attorney. He had defended many, many large drug dealers on the East Coast. And so, I had familiarity sort of with their business models, which is quite different than being in the regulated space. But as I started to learn about the sector through these two business partners that I met with, I traveled across the US. I started to familiarize myself with sort of the trajectory of the space and the economics and then the opportunities that existed. I mean, no other place in America, no other industry is there an industry where there is such an intense focus on social equity. And I thought that some of the programs that had been rolled out sort of in California, in Oakland in particular, even in Illinois, they were fascinating to me, and I had some mentors in the space that I was looking up to very early on. And I thought this might be an area of opportunity that I could get into and transition into with my business skills and sort of make magic happen. And that was sort of the impetus for me joining. There was just opportunity and interest in this space. The two were sort of married, and I started to pursue licensure through Maryland.
If you don't mind, I want to ask you a little bit more about, because you brought it up, you said you had suffered a brain injury before this?
I did, yeah. With something that you know a little about. Yeah, sure. So in 2016, I had a life-threatening bout with meningitis. And, I was familiar with brain injuries. My dad had a hematoma when I was younger. And he was brilliant, was a Mensa. And through his recovery, he sort of lost his ability to read when he was injured. And so I knew what that sort of recovery period was like. Well, when I had meningitis and I came out of the hospital, I could barely talk. I could barely speak. And I had to relearn how to speak and use my words, but it was really a struggle. And so I thought that I was going to have a little bit of downtime. And as it turns out, I didn't take that downtime quite in the way that I thought that I would, but I learned a lot in the early stages of actually my investigation of the cannabis space about the medicinal properties and benefits of cannabis and the ability that it has to serve people for not only pain and reduction of inflammation, but of course to serve as an aid in focusing,
especially with the ischemic type of issues also, right?
Absolutely. Right. And so anyway, yes, I had meningitis. It was pretty serious. pretty
And
serious.
were you a cannabis user before? Were you a cannabis user after? If I can ask you that, is that okay?
Yeah, no, of course it's okay. I'm an open book. You'll find that to be true for me. Yeah, I was not a cannabis user actually. I've had some very bad reactions to smoking the plant. And
Yes.
what I learned is that I sort of have an allergic reaction to inhalation and that method of use. So I tend to stick to edibles and topicals. I've done suppositories, which I think are excellent for pain management, especially for women in particular, cramps, hip pain for people who are elderly and things of that nature. But and tinctures I find to be very effective for me as well. But yeah, I wouldn't call myself a user prior to having had meningitis and dabbling a little bit in the space. And then I just started to become not quite a connoisseur, but certainly someone who uses the plants, many forms or modalities of taking in the plant and pretty regularly now.
So when you decided, and this multi-state operator reached out to you and said, I'm thinking about doing something in the state of Maryland, and we'd like you to kind of head this up. I know Maryland went through and is still going through some tumultuous times when it comes to licenses and those kinds of things there in the state. I came in, I remember several times, I came in way back when Governor O'Malley was governor of the state and spoke to him on several occasions about, having safe access to cannabis for patients in the state. And being a minority and being a woman, did you think that you'd have an opportunity to gain access to a license? And I know, even though Maryland talked a very hard game about social equity, I'm not necessarily sure that they've actually put that in play. Now they have, but back then I don't think that was put in place. Tell me a little bit how tough the road was for you, starting off and understanding that yes, you could do this.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the easiest part of that question, and that was really, did you think that you would be able to have this opportunity? And I think the humble part of me, which is a big part of me, would say, I didn't know exactly what this would look like, but the very grounded and self assured part of me said that my spirit told me to move, and I thought that through prayer, this was really the direction I was supposed to be going in. There was no reason for me individually to think I was going to be building a cannabis business, much less um, a virtual operation. And in that regard, I would say no, I didn't have that line of sight. But did I think that I'd be successful? Yeah, my spirit told me that I'd be successful. And quite frankly, from the onset, Montel, of thinking this concept through and whether or not I would make this transition, I've been moving in faith. And so I was very self assured that I'd be successful. I just didn't know what that success would look like. And so you talked about social equity. I mean, that was in large part why I transitioned into cannabis out of real estate development and out of the nonprofit sector. I saw a gigantic opportunity, and our industry is really hyperbolically focused in many ways on social equity. Some would say it's talk, but I would challenge that and say there's no other industry that's also talking about it as consistently as we do in this sector. And so I think it's at the forefront of our industry's values and the culture of our industry. And so, I think in Maryland, in many ways, the regulatory construct has kind of got it right. Like, I think our regulators are doing a great job. You were with O'Malley, I was with Hogan, and then now Governor Moore. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think we've had very consistent leadership in our state's General Assembly and our legislative branch, as well as on the regulatory side, which helps keep a market stable. Now, with regards to how social equity is being rolled out, hey, ask me in 3 years. But the first round of social equity licenses technically was our round. And that was solidified with this last 2023 round, which that was really the social equity licensing round. But all of the 2019 awardees, of which there were less than 15, we were sort of rolled into that social equity program. So, we're also considered social equity licensees. So I think, many of us have struggled to get operational. I would say, we don't have a monopoly, Montel, on challenges as people of color trying to access capital. First of all, we don't have many of us, very few of us, should be honest about it. We just don't have multi generational wealth that we're drawing down against, or peer groups that we can go out to make a quick phone call and say, hey, do you have $1 million to invest in this deal I've got? And so we're disadvantaged there. I think on the lending side, there is a construct of banking in this country that has a long and deep history of being
Not
biased,
equitable. Yes, right.
not equitable at all, and biased in lending practices. And it's painfully obvious. It's redlined to some extent, the banks and how they loan. And so I think that from a an equity raise and a debt raise, we certainly have more challenges than some of our less melanated peers. But do I think it's insurmountable? No. I do think you have to have an extraordinary amount of business aptitude, however, relationships, and a relentless pursuit of excellence to be successful. I do think that that's required.
And to overcome some of these obstacles that you faced, were you prone to have to reach out to friends and family to actually get some?
Oh my God.
Huh?
Montel, you have no idea. I mean, well, like you, I think, you're familiar with the licensing process in Maryland. Very. I've got some friends, one who's a peer, Sherry Blunt, and she and I talked early on about what this could look like, what it looked like for her. She's another entrepreneur, as you know, out in Illinois. And, you know, I, I had to reach out to a lot of friends and family and pitch them on something that, wasn't materialized. Unlike selling sort of candy or sneakers or a consumer packaged good, there was no there to sell, right? It was almost like you were selling a concept, of course, which would take many years to sort of come to fruition, because even after 6 years now, we're just having a grand opening of one of our business establishments. But yeah, I had to reach out to everybody, friends, family, sorority sisters. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and had to, pound the pavement with some of my line sisters. And I only had 9 original investors in the business. So it was a lot of hard work, and we're still raising, but it's a challenge.
Standard Wellness Maryland is a pioneer in many ways. And can you give some of our listeners some of the overview of what the business is all about? What sets you apart from other cannabis companies? Is Standard Wellness Maryland, is that the name of your dispensaries? Is that you're completely vertical? So tell me about how you're set up. You got a grow, you have a processing, you have the ability to open multiple dispensaries, I assume?
Yes, so that's a great question. So Standard Wellness Maryland is a vertically integrated license site in the state of Maryland. We really got a vision a vision of the world, really, where cannabis is respected as like a safe, natural, and enjoyable means to healthy living. And um, our purpose in the state is to really provide all clients on the cultivation and processing side, as well as the retail side, with the highest quality of naturally grown cannabis products using environmentally stable and health conscious cultivation and processing practices. We put our people first. I think that's one of the things that will differentiate us. We are right now in the process of securing our space in Western Maryland, in Frederick, Maryland, for cultivation and processing. And then we also have a license to distribute, which is on the retail and dispensary side. So we will be opening those doors in just a couple of weeks here in November under the brand name The Forest. So the store will be The Forest, and it's in downtown Baltimore in the Canton area. And we're excited to be a part of that community. It's vibrant, it's up and coming. The community is very close knit, and so we have already been welcomed quite graciously by the folks in that community, business owners and people that will patronize the store. But at the end of the day, I think our goal is to acquire a few more, hopefully, retail dispensary opportunities. We've got one
When you say
with a
acquire, now
partner.
did your vertical license come with a certain number? Every state's a little different. So some of the vertical
It
licenses
is.
will come in and say that you have 9, you can open up 9 retail outlets, which would be dispensaries. And as they grow, you
Yes,
can grow for multiple companies and you can grow the product. And then, so break that down for me. Is that what you've been doing?
sure. So the first thing we did was we were awarded through a merit-based application our cultivation license. And then the second step was that we were able to obtain a retail license through the legislative process in 2023. So it was statutorily sort of issued, and then we had to apply for it, but it was not quite merit-based in the way that the previous round had been. And then the third step in sort of building out this vertical was the acquisition of processing. And that license came through the social equity round, where we partnered with the social equity licensee and we were able to win a license in that round. And so that will be the last phase of our building out of this business. First is retail. The cash flow comes in a little bit faster there. The entry point is a little less expensive to build out the facility. And then we are shifting gears and going to cultivation. We hope that by next summer we'll be, completely built out in our Frederick facility, and we'll be growing in a relatively small space. We'll do mostly our brands. We may partner with one or two other brands, but we'll have in-house brands. At this point, we've got 5 that we're building out the architecture for, and then we'll roll into that, build out the processing business, and we'll make sure that we've got a very strong line of manufactured goods as well to complement the flower that we're building, the flower that we're growing in that facility.
Okay, and so right now your objective is to produce flower-centric, smokable-centric products, and then you're going to move on to other products, or you just want to. I mean, so many people get in this business and they want to be the jack of all trades and end up being the jack of none, or you want to get in and find your niche first and then move out, expand. Is that the objective?
Yeah. So we're starting with rolling out one women's focus line right now. It's called Glow. We're excited about that. That'll drop at Q4 of this year, so not too far away. And we think it'll actually will be within the next month. That's the target rollout date. But we're going to start with Glow and only manufactured goods. We will transition with our other 4 brands. 2 of them will be only focused on flower and smokable products, and then the other 2 will be hybrid. So one will be only flower, 2 will be focused on flower, and 2 will be focused on both flower and manufactured products.
Manufactured products meaning edibles, distillate, vape carts. You want to try to do that whole gamut at the same time?
Yeah, no, probably not. We're working on the composition of which products will be dropped under what brands right now. We've got a manufacturing partner that's working with us on Glow. Since we're not operational, they'll be white labeling for us. But we've got a pretty narrow scope there. So we'll be working on gummies and vapes, which were sort of the easiest for us to nail in terms of exactly how we wanted to come into the market. And then we've got, a strategic business plan for the other 4 brands. And the products that we'll roll out will really depend on what we decide once we're operational.
I would just venture to tell you, I've been doing this for 23 years now, and have visited and been involved in multiple states. I will tell you, you are sitting in the back room of your apartment with a blank canvas, and you've got in front of you, a palette of 50 different colors. I would, if I were you, stay to the right or the left of that palette. Figure out 1 or 2 colors. Stay there. Get those 2 colors to be the demand product. Then think about the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th color. So often, so many people in your position, I'm sorry, I'm not lecturing. I'm just offering up a little advice.
No, I receive it, Montel. I receive the advice.
So often, there are so many of us who get in this business who can see. You're looking and you see the forest. Don't see the trees, but you see the forest. You want to be part of that forest. Stop, because there's a whole bunch of logs laying on the ground in between you and the end of that forest. There's all these trees that have already fallen down. So when you jump in there, you might pick something that's going to be a tree that fell to the ground and nobody wants. Ease up on the number of the same advice you give to a brand new cannabis user, slow as you go. is the same advice that I like to give to brand new entrepreneurs. Slow as you go. Master something. Master it. Own it. Be the person who is the only person. Everybody in Canada wants to come by and get just that. That's all they want. They want that. After they get that for about a year, then you can say, oh, by the way, I do have this. I had orange. Here's an apple. Oh, okay, boom. Then another year. I mean, just take your time because unfortunately, we get people who come in all the time who just like, I'm one of those. I literally have had product in the marketplace in Massachusetts, product in the marketplace in Georgia. Georgia is about to roll out. Georgia's been a tough market for us, only because of some of the ridiculously onerous laws and restrictions that they have there. However, what we're finding out is that even though they are very limited in the SKUs and the delivery systems that they're allowing, it's going to be better for us to master one delivery system before we go to another. So now the forest is going to be your dispensary, and it's not just a store, right? I mean, how are you going to like make this bigger than just a dispensary? You want to foster community and promoting holistic other treatment modalities and wellness. How do you want to do this? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of dispensary owners that come into their space with their first dispensary and they want to make it a wow dispensary, and it's visually appealing. Sometimes they blow the budget doing so, but they don't have a community impact sort of thrust or value. And so for us, it's really important to be a part of the local community. Again, I told you I started in the nonprofit sector, so my heart is with service. We certainly want to have a visually appealing space. We brought in a former leader from a very well-known cannabis brand out in California, one of the biggest brands in the industry. Their former head of retail, so she's got extensive experience in launching retail establishments and understanding throughputs and timing and pace, and most importantly, the customer experience. So we certainly put our people first, sort of like the Southwest Airlines model of servant leadership. And then from there, I would say our community comes right behind that because our people will put our community first. And so we're building partnerships with local artists. We've got partnerships with all of the community associations. We're working with Care First, Blue Cross Blue Shield to do educational training and sessions. We're trying to make it so that we have the ability to really service our local community's needs by getting cannabis products to them safely and quickly as well. So we're working with local dispensary delivery partners who've already run these routes. They know the areas quite well. They know what areas are good, what areas are a little bit more challenging from a safety perspective. And so we're mapping all of that out. And we've been doing that for the last 7 months. Once we secured this space, we started immediately identifying how we wanted to work in the community. But we've also got health and wellness partners in the Merritt Gyms property right next to us. So I think we've heard in small focus groups what people want and how they associate cannabis with wellness. And our goal is really to meet people where they are. We think that health should be like a source of fortitude and wellness and not judgment. And for the longest time, I think cannabis has been a source of judgment. I mean, in our communities in particular at Montel, in communities of color and Black communities, I find quite often a very undereducated population when it comes to cannabis and the negative connotations that a lot of Black and Latina communities have with cannabis. I mean, they're not organic in that it didn't come from us. It came from being overly incarcerated and policed. And so, our goal is to really work within the community to make sure people see cannabis as a source of fortitude and wellness. We're training our team members to ensure that this is at the forefront of how they interact with people, that they don't treat people with judgment. And so that people have like a deep positive relationship with not just the lifestyle choice, but with the person or the people that are bringing them their products for wellness. And that's through the Forest Dispensary. So, I don't want to give you all of the juice, but I think, quite frankly, our values have a lot to do with what's going to differentiate us. I think authenticity, servant leadership, sort of community empowerment, purpose-driven profits. They're not just words. Universal respect. These are the ways that we're building this company and building this brand. And, thankfully, we've had a lot of good folks, not just in the community, but also peer leaders who have been in cannabis for 10, 15, 20 years, who have helped advise us on how to enter into this already existing market, because we don't have the advantage of being a first mover, right? But we do have a few tricks up our sleeve. Since we're social equity applicants, we do have priority shelf space. And so that's a huge opportunity, which we can take advantage of by being a first mover on the social equity side.
You mentioned distribution. Do you have delivery service also? Is that part of your license?
We don't, but we have a delivery partner who we hope will be, stationed out of our space, which is another thing that the cannabis regulators in Maryland came up with. It's an incredible opportunity for these micro dispensary licensees to sort of co-locate with an existing dispensary to help distribute those products and deliver them. And so I think it's brilliant. It cuts down on their overhead
So you
costs.
could have product on shelves before you open first.
Well, we could have product on the shelves.
And
We'll try to open our doors as quickly as possible.
Got it.
As soon as we get licensed, we're going to open the doors, even if it's a soft opening. We've got some word that we may have to shift our opening by 1 week. We'll see how that pans out, but we certainly will open our doors as soon as we are able to. And then we hope to work with this delivery partner to get our products to people's doorsteps, wherever they are, to make sure that it's easy access. I think we live in a day and time where people are accustomed to clicking a button, and having that accessibility allows us to drive throughput and make sure that turnover is really quick in the dispensary.
Yeah, I could see, just because of the attitudes with food delivery of every type there is, other deliveries, Amazon getting stuff the same day that you order it. I can imagine
absolutely
that it could help ease the pressure of spending so much on the initial dispensary footprint by just making sure that you got the product out and the name was known. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. And so we're going to, like I said, we're going to launch one of our brands and sort of do a beta test in the market with it. And gummies were easy. Vapes were easy. We know what that throughput looks like in most other dispensaries. So the data is there to help drive that decision. But we wanted to kind of soft launch the brands. But to your point, we will be very strategic moving forward. And we have really intentional growers that we're working with. Our director of cultivation's got, 15, 20 years of experience. They came from another established multi-state operator. We're excited about how we're coming into this space. And especially at a time where, as like at the national level, we got a lot to talk about. I mean, we're in smack dab about a week out from some very important elections at the presidential level and at the senatorial level. And then we've also got rescheduling right on the horizon. And those things could really affect us.
And I believe I'm going to ask, let's talk about it since you brought it up, because you think that it's on the horizon. I'm going to say to you that I think that we're being hoodwinked a little bit more than we think or are aware of, the same way we got hoodwinked 4 years ago. Because 4 years ago, there was a whole statement made by those elected that within the first 100 days, things were going to change. Well, that went out the window on day 12. It was gone out the window.
Right.
And the same only reason why it's being discussed now is because, somebody let the cat out of the bag before the other one let the cat out of the bag. And so now all of a sudden people are making all these promises of what's going to happen on a couple of first days. I don't believe any of it, to be absolutely honest with you.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of rescheduling, had they followed the original plan, this issue should have been settled already, but already got politically pushed out past, inauguration day. So now, is there really going to be a rescheduling? And so, I think a lot of people need to just be a little bit careful what we wish for, because this whole idea of rescheduling, you got to remember, if they reschedule this to Schedule 3, whose purview is it? It's the FDA's. That means that the FDA can step in at any point in time and make some unilateral decision that anything on your shelves needed to be approved by them before you put it on your shelf. That means that now you have to have all your products approved by somebody who probably was never a cannabis user or never knew anything of cannabis. And that means that you're going to have somebody who's going to come to the table with all their biases telling you what to do with your product. And let's also remember that if you reschedule, who owns the patent on all the minor cannabinoids?
The
Federal
federal
government,
government does, which very few people
630-507.
know.
Most people don't know that.
Yep.
The U.S. government has
Yep.
owned the patent and has renewed that patent multiple times.
Consistently.
Consistently.
Yep.
They do it every single year. So the truth of the matter is this could be a nightmare. And I say that out of one side of my mouth, but then out of the other side of my mouth, I say, well, but there is no funding whatsoever that can fund an organization that's going to have to be that big to be able to try to control this. So the cat's already out
To
the bag.
regulate it. Nope.
Huh?
Nope. No, the regulatory requirements from a funding standpoint are far greater than what I think the federal government's appetite for investment is into cannabis. And so I think in large part we'll end up, let's say we end up getting rescheduled, just make that assumption that we will have to rely on the state to state sort of impact. And most states have that regulatory mechanism for the addition, removal, or rescheduling of a substance following like a change to the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But a majority of states will require a controlling authority like the Board of Pharmacy in Ohio, Department of Health to regulate substances in the same manner sort of as the federal government. That said, states vary.
And but if the states try to get into that, the states don't have the budget to be able to do this. Especially when you take a look at some states. I have product in Massachusetts. They've got over 100 dispensaries. There's not enough people to go out and police this. And all they're going to do is drive the black and gray market deeperly, more entrenched into the business than they really are today. I mean, they're already there. We already know that. What is it? 2021, legal cannabis in America sold $25 billion worth of product. The black and gray market sold close to $70 to $80 billion worth of product.
Triple that.
And I know in Maryland right now, the black and gray market is as strong as it's ever been. Now, the one thing that's already started to happen, even in Maryland, in D.C., in New York, and other places, the black and gray market is now smartened up, and they recognize that they have a target on their back because there's something to distinguish. They can say that the legal market, at least we're giving you good, efficacious product. The black and gray market is still giving me dirty and unclean product. So what's the black and gray market doing? They're cleaning themselves up. They're testing.
And they're untested. Yeah. I think, it's I would say that having an operation in Maryland is unlike DC and New York in so many ways. And I think you have proliferation of these gray market businesses or black market businesses all over the place, capturing market share, selling untested products to anybody they want to sell it to because it is not regulated anyway. Maryland's a little different. You do see pop-ups, but nowhere to the extent that those other two states. I just think I don't even want to be in the same sentence as them because what they've got going on is so different than what we've got going on. But is it possible that it's murky business? 100%. I agree. We're going to have to keep a close eye on how states respond to the rule change. But generally speaking, it's murky business. It'll be important for business owners, elected officials, regulators, everybody, general public to remain engaged in this process. I do think that, the DEA's potential rescheduling of cannabis from 1 to 3 within the CSA is a significant drug policy change. Perhaps, if it happens, one of the most significant in the last 50 years. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it is absolutely something that in my mind, and I guess we differ on this here, that is potentially a great move. I hope so. Cannabis has been stigmatized for too long.
Let me just tell you something. I truly, truly hope so. It's a great move, but I think what's going to happen, I've been talking to some of the greatest minds in the cannabis industry in the world on this podcast and talking to some of the lawyers who are getting ready and getting, they're trying to gear up because this is going to be a nightmare because first off, every single state's going to, everybody's talking about, well, at least it'll solve the problem of 280E. No, it's not. Anybody who thinks that, okay, yeah, so it may open it up and let banking come in, but every single state in this country has the ability to put a surtax on anything they want. So, you think your taxes are going to go down? They're not. The taxes may even go up. So therefore, it drives more people into the black market. So, I mean, there's so many issues. But if it does open up banking, it's going to open up banking to the big multi-state players, and the small mom and pops places, and the growers who have been doing this, almost kind of like the craft growers may not have that same open up, and that could be deliberate in some ways. Banks could actually deliberately try to shut you down. Then what?
Mhm. I think there are so many
Right.
unknowns. And, we sort of have to game theory this out here. And I think there are a lot of incredible organizations, especially collective, like associations that are working on this that have hundreds of minds behind how this should happen and serving in an advisory capacity to our legislators at the federal government level. I think for me, one of the things that I am most looking forward to, Montel, is that we'll see expanded opportunities for cannabis research within organizations and scholastic institutions across the U.S., which allow scientists like those you've probably spoken to study cannabis more freely and hopefully with additional funding. I mean, Israel is light years ahead of us. Israel, light years ahead of
But
us.
remember, Israel was funded by the United States. A lot of people aren't even aware of the
Correct.
fact that we were putting money in Meshulam's pocket
Lots of
back
investments
in
there.
the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s, 90s. They got a 50, 60, 70, $100 million from the United States of America. And when it comes to research, that's what really bothers me a little bit. I'll tell you why.
Tell me.
Because if it's Schedule 3, who controls the research for Schedule 3 medications in America? The FDA.
Well, again,
So
the FDA goes back to
go back to the
government.
FDA. And that means that we're going to have to start doing, for every pre-roll, some sort of a double-blind study. Really? So now you do a double-blind study on one pre-roll, and then every harvest of that cultivar is different. The molecules
It will be.
will be different. So that means that, are they going to force you to do the same thing that they're forcing pharmaceutical companies to do with a
Well,
new version?
no, I don't think so. But I think that that's one of those things that will have to be informed by the subject matter experts that are in the space, because to some extent, they will be relying on subject matter experts. And so I think by and large, folks that are in the space are going to profusely reject the concept that we go through the same sort of testing as pharmaceutical companies and having to do those studies. We just don't know what the regulatory
Right.
construct or guidance will be coming out of any
I'll give you
rulemaking.
an example.
And it's hard to.
I'm in Georgia. I'm in Georgia right now, and I got product
Mhm.
in Georgia. And every single one of the SKUs of our product has to go through some regulatory commission to approve everything from packaging to lettering to ingredients. And
Same
the
in
majority of
Maryland.
those people that are sitting on that approval process don't have much background in cannabis. It's brand new background in
Same in
cannabis.
Maryland.
And so therefore, it is a, from conception to shelf, it's a couple of years, which is really crazy. I just hope that we're opening up a Pandora's box if we go to a reschedule, and that Pandora's box open is going to have ripple effects throughout the entire industry that I don't think this industry is even aware of yet.
No doubt. And I think it would be hard to forecast
Yeah.
even what those would look like. I mean, it's hard to forecast what those would look like. I don't think that any of us have a real finger on the pulse of how this rollout would look. I mean, there are so many variables that are affected by so many different agencies. Again, the regulatory aspect, even the legislative aspect, quite frankly, is going to be hard to navigate once the rule is dropped. And so, I think that this is going to happen overnight? Nope. Do I think we're going to understand all of the opportunity costs that we're stepping into? Nope. I don't think that we're going to do that. But I do think we got to step. And
Yeah.
sometimes I will share with you that in business I've learned sometimes I just got to step. Now, I don't know, I don't think there are kids listening to this, but sometimes you kind of step in shit and drag it across the rug, and that's the outcome. Sometimes you step right into a pot of gold. Sometimes you step into opportunities, that are abound and they're of service, and the reach of what you're able to do because of this groundbreaking step you've taken are ones you can't really measure for, but you got to step. And so I think right now we're stepping and we're kind of like fingers crossed, nose plug, because we don't know what the hell is going to happen. None of us do. If
Right.
any attorney, any accountant, anybody forecast this is about as accurate as being a pollster right now and saying, I think that this person is going to win over that person. We don't know. Too close to
It's
call.
it's like it's like anybody who forecast this back in 2010 is shocked at how wrong they all were. Because even looking at it in
Yeah,
2017, how wrong they all were. 2020, how
absolutely.
wrong they all were. Nobody knew that in 2022
No,
that the federal every state was going to make cannabis a essential service. No one knew that during
correct.
under COVID. Now it's
Correct.
an essential service. But the one thing that we do know is that the more onerous you make the register, the administrative rules and
Regulation.
regulations, the more onerous you make them, the more draconian they are, the more it benefits the black and gray market, or it makes the
100% agree with
battle
that.
even harder.
We agree on
Yep.
that. We agree on that. And I don't think any of us in the sector want that, and I think we're all advocating. Some of us as registered lobbyists are lobbying, of course. We're following the rules, but we are making our voices known. And I think that's important. Again, we just got to step. So whatever that step looks like, some people are stepping and voting,
Yep.
right? Because in addition to this one rescheduling change that we've got over here that we're navigating, we've also got concurrently the election. And
Right.
so, we've got two very interesting candidates who have become very vocal in the last 60 days around cannabis. And it's now becoming an issue that they are seemingly running on to some extent, which is great in large part for our industry. It's unfortunate in many ways we can't depend on what's being said. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, it's tricky. You say things that get into office. Once you get into office, crapshoot whether or not
Correct.
it's delivered on,
Right.
any promises delivered on. But they're saying it vocally, and that has not been the case in previous elections where you have two party leads very vocal and out in front of cannabis as an issue. And so I think that's a good thing. I think it's becoming a main street topic, and it's one that voters have a say in. And so if that is what motivates you, go to the polls and cast your ballot based on what you think you're hearing.
We need to get more of those voters out there to recognize the fact that they need to be stand up and be counted, especially when it comes to this issue.
Yes.
You got to stand up. You can't sit back and say, "Oh, their son, they didn't do it." Well, and you didn't vote, so I'm with you.
I mean, you all had an incredible turnout in Georgia not that long ago. I hope that sort of that affect that, was experienced there takes root in every other state across the nation. I'm very concerned about voter apathy in this election. And my hope that is that, it doesn't prove true, that that's really just talk. I hope that people do make it to the polls and they do prioritize this. I don't know that I'm seeing, at least here, the early voter turnout that we normally see, but I think I mean, this is a serious election
Yeah,
in so many
in
ways.
several states, though, now we're starting to at least listen to some of the people who are administrators of the election process, and they're claiming that voter turnout seems to be at some of the highest that they've ever seen before. So let's just keep our fingers crossed. And hope it
Thank
continues.
God.
Absolutely. As a minority entrepreneur in this industry, there's got to be some stuff that you are the proudest of. Tell me the things that you've accomplished that you're most proud of since starting this venture.
Uh, so this weekend, so I'm going to answer your question. I think there's this quote that my dad used to always remind me about. And Nelson Mandela said it, and it was just that the greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but rising every time we fall. And, um, I would say that over the course of the last 5 years, I've fallen or failed a lot, but I'm so thankful for the people around me, the team that I've built of supporters and team members, people who are, actual employees of the company, because they keep me humble and grounded. And I think the importance of a humble rebound is often undervalued. So I'm really proud of having a good community of people in this company and being a part of this journey, because we're going to be successful because of the people that built this company. And it's certainly not just me. I think the other thing I'm proud of is my father passed in November of last year.
Sorry.
And we were sort of like two peas in a pod. I absolutely adored my dad. My mother and I are very close as well. Both of them were instrumental in where I am today. But I'm proud that just a year after his passing, we will have 2 out of the 3 business lines launched successfully. And I'm proud of that. Like, I'm proud of the journey that I've, taken. And I have like a relentless commitment to excellence. And I, again, it's by faith, but I think that the people around me are such a big part of that. So I'm thankful about where I am in the industry. Could I be a lot bigger? Possibly, but I'm thankful for where I am. And I'm really proud of where we're going as an industry. I really am. Again, we're like I'm not the only one that's relentless. One step in front of the other, Montel, in Maryland. I'll speak on Maryland.
I literally, have been a believer that, I don't even think most people in this industry don't even understand the fact that we are no further down the road than the Wright brothers pushing that wooden plane down a hill. I mean, there's so much growth left. We have not even scratched the surface. We're not even beginning.
We're at infancy stage. We're just learning how to walk.
In utero. That's how small we are, because when this industry, I have a couple of ways to look at it. First off, when you look around the world, places like China, South Africa, Colombia, Brazil, they are growing millions of acres of cannabis and hemp. And
absolutely.
And so I think the world is starting to recognize again the value that cannabis and hemp played in the world actually evolving the way it has. So we go back. When we talk about cannabis and hemp, we're most of the time people are talking about consumer products and don't even understand there are 2,500 different usages for the hemp plant and the cannabis plant.
We're just thousands.
Thousands. We're just scratching the surface. What would you say to somebody who said, that's really interesting. I think I'd like to get into this business. What advice would you give another entrepreneur looking to break into the cannabis business?
Yeah. I would say take some real time to sit down with existing entrepreneurs and talk to them. Ask questions not only about their business, but decisions that they would make that were poorly made when they first started out, and that they would make differently if they could go back and do things over again. I think people are fairly honest when it comes in cannabis. At least I found they're honest when it comes to mistakes that they wish they could undo or decisions that they would make differently. And I think hearing an authentic person talk about what they would do differently could really help a person decide whether or not this is the industry for them. When people talk about wanting to get into sort of the plant touching side of the business, I mean, I don't poo-poo the idea, but I absolutely ask them, real questions about, have they explored non-plant touching aspects of the business, sort of the ancillary businesses that are involved in the cannabis sector, and encourage them to consider it, because this regulated side of the business is no joke, and it is not for the faint of heart. And with the real estate challenges that this country is experiencing, especially on the commercial side, I mean, a lot of investments have dried up or slowed down at the very least into the sector, because a lot of our investments came from real estate money. So I think, and funds that were previously invested in real estate. And so I try to tell a cautionary tale to potential entrepreneurs and try to open their eyes to the vast array of other opportunities outside of plant touching. But I do want to go back to one thing at Montel. This is about sort of why I feel sort of positive about the direction that we're going in, because you talked about China and we talked about some of these other countries, especially Eastern nations, where it's clear anthropologically and archaeologically, we've got evidence that cannabis has been used as a medical, treatment for thousands of years. And in the US, overt racism combined with sort of New Deal of reforms and ideologies and bureaucratic garbage, self-interest, quite frankly, resulted in prohibition under, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. When I think about where we are today, and that doesn't even mention the fact that it was on the U.S. pharmacopoeia, right, in 42 and was removed. But prior to that, it was treating medical conditions. not quite in the same way as sort of our Eastern peers,
Oh,
but
but wait,
it
if you go back and look at a newspaper in 1891, 1889, go to the classifieds, you will find nothing but hemp-based and cannabis-based tinctures and treatments
treatments.
that were there. So you're absolutely right. And let's also
Yep,
remember that the entire Revolutionary Army was clothed in hemp. The only thing that the North and South had
correct,
in common was that
correct.
they were the North and the South both had hemp clothing. George Washington grew hemp. All of our forefathers grew
Yep,
it. And don't tell me that they didn't smoke a little bit of it, because back then
because of
there wasn't a
course,
difference between hemp and cannabis. It was the same thing. They all were
right,
smoking shit. You
right,
know they were. The same way
right,
that most
right.
people in this country won't recognize the fact that, if you go back to the 1600s and the 1700s, nobody drank water. People don't know that.
Correct.
So what? No. If you go back and you look at it, everybody drank something that was close to what's called a near beer, 2.7, 2.9% alcohol, because they had to put alcohol in it to kill off all that bacteria.
Kill
Because
bacteria.
remember, upstream from you, there's a lion, tiger, and bear. Oh my, doing his doing his little thing in that stream that you put your cup in. So therefore, you would bring it
Right.
back to the time they would literally boil it, turn it into an alcohol base. So babies were drinking 2.7, 2.8%
Wine,
wine and
basically.
things like that. Correct. So,
Right.
anybody who says that this is not true, they're lying to themselves. This was back in a time when, remember, we used to have to go out in the woods and grab a leaf to go to the bathroom. Party
That's right.
time.
To wipe our
That's right.
behinds.
People slept in the dirt. People had, all kinds of pests on their body all day long, and it was hot outside. No
Hmm.
air conditioning, no heat. So yeah, if I could roll up one of those that little hemp leaf out there and smoke it and feel a little bit better, guess what? I did, and so did our forefathers. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, for everything that you've said and standing in agreement with you, I'm at the tender age of 43, right? So I don't have quite as much body of knowledge, but for all of those reasons, I feel unequivocally that we've got to get to a place where we are completely descheduled, but I would be willing to take that baby step of rescheduling. And when it comes to sort of where we are in Maryland, you know, I just think that the vast majority of people that I encounter, and yes, of course, I'm in the cannabis space, so there are a lot of people who appreciate the plant's healing benefits. We've got to get to a place where the stigma comes down, where the medicinal benefit of the plant goes up, the economic potential of the plant, not only on the cannabis side, but on the hemp side, is realized and appreciated. And we've got to get there as like a full community. Like I want people of color, and this is what I really want to do. I want people of color to understand what the hell the opportunities are here. Like I'm tired of going into spaces and people whispering in my ear, when I'm on the vineyard, hey Christina, tell me about this, hee and giggling stuff. We need to have big conversations. We need to have conversations at every conference, Montel, every Divine Nine,
Yeah, but you know
Angel
what? But
Centennial,
that's the
everything.
difference in what you're doing with the forest and what you're doing with your whole setup, is the fact that you're inviting other stakeholders into the table to talk about health and wellness. One of the things that I've said since day one, the biggest injustice this industry has done to itself is its lack of education. Just like you started in real estate, location, location, location was the most important thing for real estate. Well, how about education? Education is the most important thing right now in this cannabis
It
industry.
is.
We've got 91% of respondents saying unequivocally that they support medical cannabis. 91% of
That's
people in
right.
America.
That's huge.
76% of people in America say they support recreational use. That means
That's right. That's bigger than like people who support Disney.
correct.
Like,
Correct. So now that means that what we've got to do
right,
is we've now got to steer
right.
them in the right direction, so that when they have that conversation at the dinner table with that grandmother or that aunt or that uncle who still is doing the poo poo, we need to have them say, no, wait a minute, you might got to understand something. You take a look at any country around the world right now that has now embraced cannabis for medical reasons, their pharmaceutical sales go down. That's the only reason
Yes.
why here in
That is
America.
the problem here,
Correct.
though. That's a self-serving interest group
Correct.
that does not want our success, but we
Correct.
still have to have the venues, and it's up to the large influential bodies in our communities, and I even look to, when I speak of our communities, I'm talking about micro communities and macro communities. At the federal level, our caucuses. Our caucuses shouldn't be having no parties and no events in the fall for CBC without saying, hey, there is this huge industry that's over here booming. And there's legislation on the table that actually will affect everybody if we pass this. Because what you all have people in handcuffs for and serving time for, and y'all are not investing in, this is about to be $1 trillion industry while you're sleeping on it. And so let's talk about this, because we are not talking about, in my mind, enough the medical benefits, yes, especially on the mental health side, because 95% or more of everybody I encounter is using for medicinal treatment of things like anxiety and certain functioning disorders.
Anybody who gravitates to cannabis over alcohol is doing so, whether they admit it or not, for a medical reason. If you want to go home and relax,
100,
you want to go home and
yes,
relax, that's medical. You want to go home and get better sleep, that's medical. You want to go home and
it
just feel
is
better, ease some of the tension in your muscles, that's medical. What we've got to
medical.
do is we've got to get this industry to stop trying to figure out how to buy their next yacht or get their next supercar. What they need to do is start reinvesting that money in their own communities. There's nothing that stops any cannabis organization in Maryland or anywhere else in this country from doing public service announcements that talk only education. You can't sell a brand, you can't market your brand, you can't market your product, but you could talk about the fact that cannabis does X, Y,
Yes.
Z. We need to start putting
Well,
together. Huh? I was going to say.
I was going to
Go
say,
ahead.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And for if there is an opportunity that you know of that I can take advantage of, I'm here for it. I try to do as much service as I can on panels, on talk shows, whether it's a podcast or not, radio shows, any opportunity that I can get where the platform is, let's talk about this plan and what it does. I am game for it, because I think we're missing out on a lot of
You know what?
opportunities here. A
I'll
lot.
tell you something, Christina, and I bet you hard money when I say this to you, light bulb's going to go off in your head. One of the things that we need to start doing is folks like you and I, we need to get together a group of people and go visit the Black churches and the churches across America on a Sunday morning. Go in.
Hey, I just got goosebumps off that. We got several big ones in our community. We got them in Baltimore, a lot in Prince
Correct.
George's County.
Correct.
Montel, I'm down
talk
for it.
talk to next time you see Governor Moore, and it's really very funny because I've been he's been circling around me through the last 3 weeks. Almost everywhere I go, somebody says, "Oh, do you know Governor Moore?" I'm going, "Of course I do. I know who he is." And I was the first person who said that I wanted to see him be the head of the ticket. I said that nobody else was listening to me about 6 months ago, but I was saying, come on now, this is the guy. If we want to find another guy that can actually do this at the helm, it's him. People aren't listening to me, so I'm telling you, if we could figure out, the governor, it behooves him to educate his citizenry on cannabis.
For
Because
sure.
so the next time you have a meeting with him, have him put on a state-sponsored conference, not for B2B. We got enough B2B. There's enough B2B
We
in this
do.
industry. He needs to be putting on B2C. That's business
Yeah,
to
beat it.
consumer.
GP, general public.
Correct.
Because even consumers, right? We're not necessarily needing to drive consumers, though that's always great. It's the naysayers, the folks that are intimidated by
Correct.
conversing about the plant,
Correct.
the folks who were disproportionately and negatively impacted by the war on drugs. Is those people
The,
we want to talk to. But the churches, hey, you're spot on. That's
the
ground
first
zero for
governor,
education,
the
by the
first
way.
governor, I think the first governor that steps up and said, I signed that bill and allow this for my constituency. It is my responsibility to make sure my constituency understands why we said yay rather than nay. The first governor that does that,
Yeah.
that state's going to, I'm telling you, the revenue that's going to come into the state
Sales are going to balloon.
through the roof. So, use my
Yeah,
name in
yeah,
a
the money
conversation.
will come. They always say you find your passion and the money will come. I do think being committed to education and service is critically important, foundational to who I am. But I do believe that by just simply talking about it, educating about it, hey, the walls are going to fall down,
Yeah.
Montel. The walls will come tumbling down.
You preaching, so let's get it done.
They're going to come tumbling
All
down.
right.
And I think, and it'll be for the benefit of all, because
Well,
I think, there are kids that are out here using, their parents are too shy or uncomfortable talking about it. They have no way of talking to the children about it, right? Like, they have people in their family that are suffering from conditions that can be treated by it. There are business opportunities outside of regulated cannabis sort of industry. And on the hemp side, huge
correct. And
semiconductors, it's
there are
everything.
parents that need to talk to their kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old about overuse. There's nothing wrong with doing this. Talk to them. If
Absolutely.
you're going to talk to them about alcohol being overused, talk to them about cannabis being overused. It's okay. So look,
Absolutely.
I got to tell you, my friend, look, it's been incredible. I appreciate you being a part of the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Your pioneering spirit and, just your understanding and dedication to making sure that this community, the cannabis community, is empowered and ready to do what it should do is truly inspiring. You always have a home here. If you ever want to talk about something, you just reach out to us, and we'd love to have you back. I barely got through half the questions I had for you. For those who've been listening in for the last hour, just make sure you hit that subscribe button down there, and you'll learn more about Standard Wellness in Maryland. And before I go, and the forest, but before I go, why don't you give them your stats? Where can they go to reach you, Christina, if they needed to?
Yeah. So you can certainly follow us on Instagram at the Forest Dispensary, or the Forest Baltimore. You can also sign up for our mailing list at theforestbaltimore.com. And then finally, if you want to contact me, if you want me to come and talk to your church community, or have Montel and I come and speak with you guys, because I think that is an idea and that is a powerful tool for change. Certainly, you can reach me through LinkedIn. It's Christina B. Johnson on LinkedIn. And I am more than willing to talk offline about any of these topics that we've covered, or further discuss our business and what we're up to. Cannachris is what I am on Instagram personally. _Cannachris.
Perfect. I'm going to make sure all of our listeners reach out to you if they possibly can. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today, and take care of that family of yours.
Yes.
And let's connect again sometime soon. Okay.
That sounds good. We're going to be building together, Montel. Have a
We
great
have
one.
to. And for all of you out there, make sure you tune into the next episode of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.